I wanted to get into D&D for some time, but haven't really made much of an effort as I'm not very outgoing, and even after a year, I didn't have many contacts in the city I am still studying in. But a friend of mine happened to ask me out of the blue if I would be down to join a D&D group he wanted to set up with him as the DM. Being already interested prior, I said sure. At the day we agreed upon, I arrived at his place with a basic character idea in mind. I had planned to play a female half-elf cleric, Tyria, who had been raised by her human mother. She had never met her father, but was told that he said he would come and find her one day. Tyria would have chosen the profession as a healer after having her mother saved by a wandering cleric. Following the death of her mother, years later, she would have left a small town and made her way around the world to help people. Faced with some suspicion regarding her elvish nature, she found that she was trusted, or at least tolerated, after proving her good intentions. She would follow armies and try to save as many wounded as she could, regardless for which side they fought. This would have led her to a town where our group would meet and the adventure would begin. I don't know how good of a backstory this is, maybe a bit cliche looking at it now, but there are 3 things I would like you to keep in mind. Number 1, this was my first attempt at a character. Number 2, this was made up the evening before the session as I wasn't notified sooner. Number 3, I was not provided with any rule or sourcebook, so I went in blind. Sorry for the long introduction, but I feel that it will help emphasize some of my frustration. So I arrive at my friend's place, and he hands me 5 pages that I'm supposed to fill out. I don't know what half of it means, and they also seem to contradict each other. I later learned that the initial character sheet was for the D&D 5th edition. Then there were 2 more with many attributes that would have some values twice or thrice over. I was told to ignore it in that case. To this day, I don't know where he got those sheets from. So, my friend sat me down and opened a website that rolled dice. Those would be the main values for my skills: strength, wisdom, and such. I apologize if they're called something else, but my instructions to do all of this were pretty vague. The program rolled, and behold, a 12, and an 11, and the rest single digits. I was told that this was absolutely terrible, and he would just re-roll until he thought it was okay. The other players would roll in, all 2 of them, and make their characters in a similar way. And this is where I started getting a really bad feeling. So far, I wrote things off with the excuse that I just didn't know any better. But now, oh dear. The world, map, religion, story, etc. Everything was made up by my friend, who I will call DM from here on out. The map was made in paint in about 5 minutes. The religion was just the Greek-Roman pantheon copy-pasted, and apparently fictional races had their own rules here too. Remember little Tyria? Said to have stayed in her town for years, learning and healing and then wandering the world for years? I stated she would be in her 50s and 60s at this point. Well, in DM's world, elves lived only a little longer than your average human, and half-elves maybe got 100 to 110 with great luck. So that was half my backstory and motivation out the window, because he couldn't be bothered to tell me sooner or give me any details about this world. Fine, I'll just rewrite it so she's in her 20s and doesn't look for her father because he is possibly already dead. So I complied to the DM's rules, not really annoyed, yet. His game, his rules, I thought. But then another player showed his character, a monk, and said, he comes from a faraway land, so he has his own gods, and doesn't have to follow the religious choices you gave us. And then the DM just said, it was fine. So, apparently every player can just overrule the DM if they see fit. The other player, a ranger, literally said he would copy a character from a show. Don't ask me what show, I didn't know it back then, and didn't care enough to ask, and after what followed, I don't really even want to know. So the session began with our ranger having 19 points in charisma, relevant later on, and our monk having 2 19s and 2 18s in his base values. I don't remember mine exactly, but my highest was a single 15. Again, sorry for the long setup, the actual game starts now. We all sit in a tavern at the same table without knowing each other, but every other table was taken apparently. Ranger: I roll charisma to romance the table. Me internally: what the? He failed though, so nothing happens. DM asks me what do I do, so I say that I think about the last battlefield I went to, thinking about the ones I saved, and hope they return to their families. I get cut off mid-sentence by the DM saying, roll to make a saving throw to see if you have a PTSD attack. I fail, so I'm told to act out and describe all this while thinking that I pictured this going differently. The ranger, seeing Tyria in distress, rolls to romance her and succeeds. I argue that I should be allowed a saving throw. Didn't use those exact words for the lack of knowledge, and the DM agrees. I succeed, and Tyria stays distressed, but at least she's not romanced. The monk then just tries to calm her down with gentle words, and it works, with no one rolling anything. At this point, about 15 minutes have passed in real time. I'm just gonna skip the bunch of nothing that followed, 3 strangers who just so happen to share a table, go figure, down to us accepting to investigate at the harbor why there are no more ale deliveries coming in lately. The monk finishes his drink and slams his glass on the table. Or he would have if he didn't have to make a roll for it, and failed. So the glass misses the table and heads towards the ranger's crotch. He failed the saving throw and gets knocked out from getting an ale glass slammed in his... Me thinking, what in the world's going on? I'm getting told by the DM that I don't have any spells or items to help the guy out. Thinking, what kind of healer am I? The monk flings the ranger over his shoulder and off to the harbor we go. The ranger regains consciousness as we arrive, and I will shorten the investigation to this. Ranger asks everyone and wins every persuasion check, thanks to his nearly perfect charisma. Monk and Tyria just stand there being useless. The ranger player goes so far as to not even ask questions, but just to grunt or make monkey noises, and the DM is just going with it saying things like, they interpret your grunting as. We learn that the island where the ale is delivered to is now encircled by a giant serpent that is attacking everything that tries to approach or leaves. I ask the DM, how big is that island? Not too big. I guess about 10 kilometers wide, maybe 15 long. Not like a square, obviously, but you know what I mean. Why? Nothing, just for reference. Exchanging a look with the monk player, we both silently agreed there is no way that we are going to take on a sea serpent with the estimated size of some 50 kilometers in length and who knows what kind of powers. So we head back to the tavern and decide to wait for the next day and see if we can come up to a decision, meaning waiting for the session to end and ask the DM what in the world he was smoking. The ranger finally romances the barkeep's daughter and is off to spend the night in the haystack, while the monk and Tyria decide to go and get a room and call it a day. Throwback time. The monk has his own god that nobody ever heard of before and who is technically not part of the DM's world. Apparently some ancient Native American stuff, but I don't remember exactly what. While Tyria is sleeping, she awakes to the monk praying in front of a small burning pile of wood on the floor. The tavern is made of wood, naturally. So she asks him, what is he doing there? Which the monk replies, worshiping my gods. And you can't do that in a fireplace? Apparently not. So the DM informs me that the fire is slowly spreading, while, for some reason not having a healing spell, I could apparently summon clean water. So I attempt to do that, but get interrupted by the monk. How he knew that I was casting a spell or what it would do is beyond me, but I guess metagaming wins the day. So he tells me that if I try to extinguish the fire, I'm a fiend in his eyes. So I draw my weapon and get instantly knocked out by a single punch. The monk decides to pick me up and leave the city while the tavern is burning down and the fire starts to spread. We leave with the knowledge that the rager died while while being intimate with the barmaid, and that the city will be reduced to ashes at sunrise. And this is where the session ended. We never picked up on this ever again. Big shocker, I know. So that was my experience trying to play D&D. So yeah, that was a complete mess. I don't know what kind of D&D that was, but that is certainly none that I've ever played. So what do you guys think? It was really funny to read this one, and I hope I can probably find more like it.